name is Miss Connolly. If you watch any of my videos, you might know that I started making these to help my 5th graders during this crazy time when we're at home, hoping that their homework help in the future, and hoping to benefit as many students as possible right now. If you're a teacher, feel free to use and share. I'm putting it all out there. If you're a student and you found it was helpful, share with your friends. And if you're a parent, I hope that this helps you with the way we learn math these days, because I know it's different than how we learn. So please like, subscribe, and share. I'm doing this video because someone requested it. So if you have a request, please do Connolly, or send an email to connollymathathome@gmail.com. I'll be happy to make any videos if we can help some students out there. And if you are a member of my school, please check out the 4th grade videos if you're in 4th grade. I would love to have you have seen that before we enter 5th grade. So anyways, let's talk about US standard measurements. I did an in-depth video with length conversions and weight conversions. So if you go into my YouTube channel, you can watch that video. I go in depth in how to use the conversion tables, or an input-output table, to help you convert measurements. This one is going to be about capacity. Capacity is how much can fit inside something. So we're going to be talking about the amount that something can hold. So when you look at these, a cup, a pint, you might see a pint of ice cream, a quart of milk or a gallon of milk. Those are things that hold liquids, and we can also put other things in there. But when we think about this, we think about how much can fit inside something. So that's what capacity means. So let's just review what we've got going on over here. When we're thinking about 1 cup, that can hold 8 fluid ounces. Okay, so the amount that can fit in there in terms of fluids is 8 fluid ounces. Then you have 1 pint. 1 pint is the same as 2 cups. It's like the perfect amount of ice cream if we're talking about that. Okay, 1 quart is the same as 2 pints, and 1 gallon is the same as 4 quarts. And over here I have the abbreviations, so make sure you write them down, get used to them. We got to commit these to memory. So you're going to notice, and it's confusing, that there's a lot of the same words up here. So I see cups, cups, quarts, quarts, pints, pints. And that's where capacity conversions get a little bit complicated, going from one to the other. But that's okay. We're going to tackle it. So let's talk about just getting started with something simple. So let's talk about gallons to quarts. So if you have, I'm going to do an input-output table. Okay, on this side I'm going to have gallons, on this side I'm going to have quarts, and we're going to come up with a rule real quick for how to determine the number of quarts you have, given the number of gallons. So let's say that I have 8 gallons, and I want to know how many quarts that would be. How many quarts? So 1 gallon is the same as 4 quarts. This is review from maybe yesterday's lesson or the last video you watched. If you have 2 gallons, that's 8 quarts, because each gallon is 4 quarts. If you have 3 gallons, that's 12 quarts. And if you have 4 gallons, that's 16 quarts. So every time I added 1 gallon, I added 4 quarts. But what I want us to think about is, what is the rule every single time when you know the number of gallons? What do you do to this number to get the number of quarts? What do you do to this number to get the number of quarts? The rule is the same. What did you do to this number to get the number of quarts, and what do you do to this number to get the number of quarts? If you want to pause and think about it, do that. If not, let's continue. So when I'm thinking about n stands for any number of gallons. I'm going to do the same thing to it every single time to get the number of quarts. So we're kind of determining a rule for this table. If I have n standing for any number, what do I do to any number every time? I'm going to multiply it by 4, because there's 4 quarts in each gallon. So the number of gallon is that many groups of 4 quarts. Okay, so when we're thinking about 8 gallons, it would be 8 groups of 4 quarts. So we would have 32 quarts. And that's how we might figure out that there. Okay? Sometimes you're going to get a situation that's a little bit different. So let's think about an input-output table. If we were going from the number of pints to the number of quarts, first you would start at looking at your reference sheet, how many pints and how many quarts. So every time I have 2 pints, I have 1 quart. So if I add another 2 pints, I add 1 quart. Every time I add 2 pints, it's 1 more quart. So what I want to think about is, what are we doing each time? Any number of pints at all. What do you do to this number to determine the number of quarts? What is the relationship between numbers in a row in this table? Giving you a second to think about it if you wonder why I paused. So what we're seeing is that if you take the number of pints, any number of pints, and divide it by 2, you're getting the number of quarts. Okay? So let's say that they're giving you 19 pints. I'm still learning the abbreviation. So you get 19 pints, and they want to know how many quarts is that. What you're going to do is exactly what your rule says. I have 19 pints. I want to divide by 2. I know that that is 9 full quarts, 9 full groups of 2, and then I have 1 left over. So I have 1 out of the 2 pints left over, which is a half of a quart. Okay, so 1 pint is half of a quart. Because, I love when this all comes together. All the things we've learned are coming together. It's so exciting. So, if I was saying that you take the number of pints, n, and divide by 2, you all know that 1 divided by 2, the fraction bar stands for division. That's another way to write 1 divided by 2. So if you have 1 pint, you have half of a quart. That was amazing to me. I love when it all comes together. So anyways, if we have 19 pints, how many quarts do we have? We have 9 full quarts and 1/2 left over. Okay? So I went over the input-output tables in depth in the last video about length and weight in US standard measurements. So I'm going to take a break from this, and I'm going to be thinking about, what if we have to go from something like cups to pints? No, just kidding. That's up there. If we had to go from cups to quarts. Now, Miss Conley did not write how many cups are in each quart. So that means that your conversion is going to have to be 2 steps. So let's figure it out. Cups to quarts, cups to quarts. So let's say that I have 8 cups, and your problem is asking you to determine how many quarts that is. Okay? So what we have to do is we have to do 2 steps here. So if I have 8 cups, it's a lot for teachers to keep track of too. If I have 8 cups, I want to know how many pints that is, because then I can go from pints to quarts. So 8 cups equals how many pints? Well, I know that there's 2 cups in each pint. So I know if I divide my number of cups by 2, that will get me in my number of pints. Okay? If you need to do the input-output table to see it, that's what you would do. So let's do it. So if I have 2 cups, I have 1 pint. If I have 4 cups, I have 2 pints. I'm dividing by 2 here. If I have 6 cups, I have 3 pints. And if I have 8 cups, I have 4 pints. So if I have 8 cups, how many pints is it? 8 divided by 2 gives me 4 pints. Okay? So we went from 8 cups to 4 pints. We're still not there yet though. We need to figure out now, if I have 4 pints, how many quarts is that? So I come over to my conversion reference sheet, which you should have written down or taken a picture so that you can keep track of this. And I know for every 2 pints, I have 1 quart. So you start yourself a new little table again, or you can work with division if you've already seen it. So I know if I have 2 pints, I have 1 quart. That's what my reference sheet says. So I know if I have 4 pints, I have 2 quarts. So I had to do 2 steps. 4 pints equals 8 cups, and then I know that the 4 pints I ended up with equals 2 quarts. So if I have 8 cups, I have 2 quarts. So it's something you're going to have to keep track of, what steps you need to take if they're asking you to take 2 steps. Okay, let's go in the other direction, and let's say that we have 1 gallon, and I need to figure out how many cups I have if I have 1 gallon. Okay, so we're going to start with 1 gallon. If I have 1 gallon, I need to know how many cups I have. But Miss Connolly, it doesn't tell us how many cups are in a gallon. Well, yes, we're not going to list all of the conversions and equivalencies. You have to take some steps to figure it out. So I know that 1 gallon is the same as 4 quarts. So I have 4 quarts. It's the same exact measurement. Okay, same amount. Sorry, not same measurement. Same amount. If I have 4 quarts, I have 1 gallon. Okay, so now I know if I have 1 quart, I have 2 pints. So 1 quart, let's do it over here, keep it consistent, equals 2 pints. I have 4 quarts. So 4 quarts is the same as 4 groups of 2 pints. So 4 times 2 is 8 pints. So I have 8 pints. So if I have 4 quarts, that's the same as 8 pints. Keeping track of my work, going down the page, making sure everything makes sense. Okay, now go back to your reference sheet. You figured out how many pints you have. Can we figure out how many cups we have from there? Do we know the pint and cup equivalency? And we do. So I know if I have 1 pint, I have 2 cups. So I need to figure out how many cups do I have if I have 8 pints. Okay, I've decided I have a little more room over here. So 1 pint is the same as 2 cups. So I'm asking myself, how am I getting from 1 pint to 2 cups? I'm doing 1 times 2. Let me just make sure that's true if I had a little table going on right now. If I had 2 pints, I would have 4 cups. Am I multiplying this number by 2 every time? Yes. Okay, so if I have 8 pints, I know I have 16 cups because every single pint has 2 cups. 1 pint is 1 group of 2 cups. 8 pints is 8 groups of 2 cups, which would get you 8 times 2. When I say groups of, I mean multiplication. 8 groups of 2, you get 16 cups. So, after doing several conversions, we're able to figure out that 1 gallon is the same as 16 cups. So, it's going to be about organization. It's going to be about figuring out how much is in each one. And then let's talk about one more situation where you don't have a perfect number, like a whole number of cups. You might have a half of a cup or stuff like that. So let's talk about that really fast. And then I'll tell you a little story about the land of the gallon. I don't know if it's helpful, but we'll figure it out. All right, so let's think about this. Let's say that we have 15 pints. And I want to figure out how many quarts is that. I already went over this situation where it's a half, but I just want to make sure that we make it super clear. So I know in every quart, 1 quart is the same as 2 pints. So 2 quarts is the same as 4 pints. And in order to go from pints to quarts, I'm seeing that I have to divide by 2. I'm starting to see that relationship. If I was going to do an input-output table, pints to quarts, I would see it there. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is, 3. Okay, hard to talk and do this at the same time. So, anyways, I know the rule is 15, however many pints I have, I'm dividing by 2 because there's 2 pints in every quart. And I know that that would give me 7 full quarts and half of the next quart. So you could write this as 7 quarts, 1 pint. But if they're asking you to record it just in quarts, you would write 7.5 quarts. Okay? So, capacity conversions, the numbers aren't as difficult to work with, but kind of seeing the, going from one to the other, you have to keep track of what's what. So let's talk about, I learned this one time, I always have to think about it, but if you want, I don't know if it's going to be helpful, but in the land of the gallon, okay, in the land of the gallon, there was 4 queens, okay, so in 1 gallon, there's 4 quarts. I'm probably going to run out of space. Kind of make my cues really big because I'm a lot to fit in here, okay, so in 1 gallon, there's 4 queens. Each queen, each quart, had 2 princes, maybe? Yeah, we'll call them princes. So each quart has 2 pints. I know this is a crazy picture, just stick with me. So how does this picture help us? I know that in 1 gallon, there's 4 quarts because there's 4 queens. In 1 gallon, there's 8 princes, or princesses, whichever one you prefer. So I see the 8 within the gallon, okay? Each prince had 2 children, because 1 pint is equal to 2 cups, so this C is the children. So, in 1 gallon, we see 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. We see the 16 cups. So, that's just another way to think about the conversions. I saw a teacher do that one time. I thought it was interesting. You do need to know how to do the conversions using an input-output table and making a rule, but sometimes it's fun to have a little story. So, in the land of the gallon, there was 4 queens. Each queen had 2 princes. And each prince had 2 children. So you can see how much fits inside a gallon of each measurement. You can see the 4 quarts. You can see the 8 pints in a gallon. And you can see the 16 cups in a gallon. Also within a quart, you can see each quart has 2 pints. And each quart has 4 cups. Because there's 4 kids in each one. That's my little spiel about the land of the gallon. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, you know how to reach me. Please feel free to reach out. And I'll be making a metric conversion video soon. So stay tuned. But practice your US standard measurements for now. Okay? Bye.